People need to get a job and stop trying to rob people, because some people are trying to make an honest living.
Crew members were not in the cab at the time of that derailment.
To deal with the dollar crisis.
Andrew Tate is released from custody in Romania.
Dozens of tornadoes reported across 6 states. In Arkansas and Kentucky, states of emergency declared. A deadly and devastating twister hitting Little Rock. And late word tonight of a roof collapse in Illinois. More than 70 have been reported injured, with at least 4 reported fatalities. These storms on the ground in Arkansas, Iowa, Illinois. More than a dozen states under tornado watches at some point tonight, and at least 80 million Americans on alert.
Perhaps that's where that rooftop came from, but the fire department said that they had to thoroughly search both of the buildings. They also had some fires going on, from gas leaks, electrical fires. They had to do an elevator rescue at another location last night. All of these things happening due to the storm that caused so much damage here.
Excuse me, sir, do you see that? What is he doing?
He's getting good video.
Oh my God, he is.
Y'all, that could be my husband. He would do that.
Will, is that you?
Officials here are trying to reassure people that the water is safe to drink, at least through midnight tonight. This comes after a pipe burst at a nearby chemical plant in Bucks County, leading to a spill. Over the weekend, residents were urged to buy bottled water and use that as the city conducted testing. But now the city says that water samples showed no signs of any contamination in the Philadelphia water system. So they say that it is perfectly safe now to wash, to bathe, to cook, and to drink the water. They say there's no need for bottled water at this point. You can still fill up your bottles at the tap. The Philadelphia Department of Water saying they will continue to conduct testing throughout today, and they will alert the public if there's any sign of contamination.
It's all happening at a dam near Louisville, Kentucky. Emergency officials say 3 barges got loose, hitting the structure. You can see one of the barges partially underwater. Louisville Emergency Management saying one barge is carrying 1,400 tons of methanol. It's a naturally occurring chemical, but it is incredibly toxic if consumed. Louisville's water department saying that the wreck is downriver from the city's water intake. Hazmat crews are monitoring the situation.
Shooter Audrey Hale entering the parking lot. A few minutes later, Hale messaging a former basketball friend from middle school on Instagram.
The message just reads, "I'm planning to die today."
At 10:10.
Berry has resigned after facing accusations of promoting violence against transphobes in a now deleted tweet, according to Fox News. The tweet in question included a gif of actress Gina Rollins in a scene from the movie Gloria holding 2 handguns, and Berry's caption read, "Us when we see transphobes." This came the same day transgender suspect Audrey Hale killed 6 people at a Christian school in Nashville earlier this week.
Governor Hobbs' office said yesterday in a statement, the governor does not condone violence in any form. This administration holds mutual respect at the forefront of how we engage with one another. The post by the press secretary is not reflective of the values of the administration. The governor has received and accepted the resignation of this press secretary.
Thank you. My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. God. Ben, how are you, pal? One of the best guys in the United States Congress, Ben Cardin. Folks, welcome to the White House. It's a delight to have you all here. And who are those good-looking kids back there? They're your kids, all 4 of them? Well, stand up, guys. Well, I want you to know, like you, I had 2 brothers, 3 in our family, 3 brothers, and 1 sister. My sister is smarter than all of us. Not a joke. She used to be 3 years younger than me. Now she's 23 years younger than me. Yeah? She managed every one of my campaigns for office, even back when I was in high school. We went to the same university 2 years apart. She graduated with honors, I graduated. And we had a simple rule in the family. Listen to Val. My sister Valerie is incredible. So guys, be nice to your sister. You're gonna need her. You're gonna need her, I promise. It's the same lineup. You're the oldest. Who's number 2? Number 2? Who's number 3? You're twins? Are you guys twins? Okay. All right. This how it was in our outfit. Well, I'm so glad to see you all. Thanks for coming with Mom, okay? You got to take care of your mom. Dads are much harder to raise, but, you know. Before I began to speak, the reason I spent a little time with the kids, I just want to speak very briefly about the school shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. You know, Ben and I have been doing this our whole careers, it seems. And it's just, it's sick. You know, we're still gathering the facts of what happened and why.
Elon Musk is now valuing Twitter at $20 billion. Now you might think, oh, well, that sounds like a lot of money. And it is, until you consider that when he bought the social media company, he bought it for $44 billion. And that was just in October when he took it private from Twitter. We covered earlier this week some of the changes that Elon Musk is planning on making, getting rid of all the legacy verified blue check marks. Now it's all 100% pay to play, and your tweets are not going to show up in the For You page if you don't pay. You can't participate in Twitter polls if you don't pay.
An open letter signed by Elon Musk is calling for a pause on the development of more powerful artificial intelligence systems, citing risks to society and humanity. Musk's Tesla is currently using AI for its self-driving cars, but the CEO has raised security concerns about AI along with 1,000 artificial intelligence experts and industry leaders. The letter calls on developers working on systems more powerful than OpenAI's newly launched GPT-4 to pause their work for 6 months to make time for safety protocols that would prevent potential economic and political disruptions.
4 teenagers waited until she was alone in the aisle, tossed a bucket over her head, then started recording and eventually ran out of the store. Lana is a 30-year cancer survivor and developed epilepsy later in life. She says the assault deprived her of air and she fainted soon after. She was rushed to UC Irvine Medical Center. She says this had a physical and psychological impact. This stunt may be part of what's known as the Stranger Bucket Challenge, a trend surfacing on social media platforms like TikTok. The idea is people sneak up on an unsuspecting person, put a bucket over their head, and film their reaction.
Alpine residents raising the alarm on the aftermath of Loveland Reservoir being completely drained in November 2022.
With the draining to Deadpool, that just destroyed much of the surrounding area to erosion.
Sweetwater Authority says the action was taken during drought conditions to provide drinking water and other water needs to South Bay communities and save those ratepayers money. But people who live in the Alpine area say it was at the expense of recreation, wildlife, and fire protection in their backyard. Sweetwater Authority representatives voluntarily came to the Alpine Planning Group meeting to hear these concerns and answer questions.
For more than 50 years, that minimum pool has been respected until now. They did not have to drain Loveland the way they did.
Recent rainfall has brought the reservoir water levels back up to 40%, but those recent storms have also caused a lot of damage.
And look at the demolition hearing notice. The address for demo, 311 Lawton Avenue, zip code 30314. But Trebotis' home is on Lawton Street, zip code 30310.
Lawton Avenue does exist, but it is a different zip code. In fact, it's 1.4 miles down the road from the Trebotis home.
I come and meet the contractor out one morning, and the whole house is gone. Everything's gone, nothing but dirt.
Council has determined that the city cannot accept responsibility for this matter and therefore cannot pay this claim. He has now filed this lawsuit against the city.
The city demolishes the property and then sends you a bill for accidentally or mistakenly negligently demolishing your house.
Donald Trump has become the first former United States president to face criminal charges. The case in New York relates to alleged hush money payments to an adult entertainer before the 2016 election. Mr. Trump denies wrongdoing. Well, for the very latest, we can speak now to our Washington correspondent, Gary.
Which I find to be rather distasteful as a progressive who's, frankly, is supportive of sex work, that it seems like liberals are trying to embarrass Donald Trump in his choice to sleep with Stormy Daniels, doing this weird kind of like toxicity by association to a kind of an unsavory figure, and in doing so, I think betraying some liberal ideals in the process. I mean, the point isn't, ooh, LOL, Donald Trump slept with Stormy Daniels and indicting Stormy Daniels in the process. Right. The point is, it was a campaign finance violation. The parallel that I think is most apt is the one that I think Russell Brand made last week and that we talked about between Donald Trump's inappropriate use of campaign funds here and the inappropriate use of campaign funds by Hillary Clinton to pursue the Steele dossier, for which she had to pay an $8,000 fine and the DNC had to pay, I think, a $150,000 fine or something like that. The illegal aspect of this is the campaign finance violation. Not sleeping with someone, not having an affair, not all of these kind of like weird moral crimes that people are trying to legislate in the court of public opinion. If it's a campaign finance violation and that's what's against the law, then you have to compare it to what Hillary Clinton did and make a decision about whether or not people are treating these situations the same way. How did we frame the chance of lock her up when it was Hillary Clinton that was under the microscope a few years ago? And did we see that as anti-democratic? Did we see that as a kind of an authoritarian impulse to lock up political actors that you don't agree with? Yes, that's what the liberals thought at the time. And I just can't get past the hypocrisy of this, especially when, as you pointed out, there are much more substantive crimes that Donald Trump has been accused of. The strategic question of why this New York case is going ahead before the Georgia case, I don't know if it's just a goof. I don't know if it's New York DAs trying to make a name for themselves, having been under pressure for not being tough enough on crime, or trying to deflect from not being having progressives support them or having tough on crime people support them because they're kind of charting this middle ground and thinking this is a slam dunk for them. But whatever it is, it seems to be really undermining a national strategy to undermine the former president.
10,000%. I agree with everything you just said.
Financial Times JP Morgan chief Jamie Dimon to be interviewed under oath in Jeffrey Epstein lawsuits. Sworn testimony scheduled to take place behind closed doors in May as bank fights litigation. So he will be interviewed under oath about his bank's decision to retain the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as a client, said people familiar with the matter. The sworn deposition due to take place in May is the latest development in two high-profile cases brought against that bank by an alleged Epstein victim and by the U.S. Virgin Islands, where the disgraced financier had a home. They claim that JP Morgan, where Epstein banked for 15 years, from 1998 to 2013, benefited from human trafficking and ignored several internal warnings about its clients' illegal behavior.
The complaint alleges that the victims were targeted because eBay executives were unhappy with the coverage of eBay on the couple's website.
It didn't take us an hour to realize the ramifications of a public company trying to destroy a journalist. They were attacking the First Amendment, freedom of the press. They wanted to destroy Ina and our publication.
Former federal prosecutor Andrew Lelling says the plan to target the Steiners was hatched at eBay.
What was unique about this case is that you had relatively senior management at a Fortune 500 company who thought it was a good idea to launch what can only be described as a campaign of terror, targeting a middle-aged couple in Natick.
Why?
Well, the why is actually harder than it seems.
Investigators learned in April of 2019, eBay's then CEO, Devin Wenig, shared a link to this post Dinah had written about his annual pay. eBay's chief communications officer, Steve Weimer, wrote back, "We're going to crush this lady." About a month later, Wenig, the CEO of eBay, texted, "Take her down." Prosecutors say Steve Weimer later texted eBay security director Jim Baugh, "I want to see ashes. as long as it takes, whatever it takes.
Everyone, lots to unpack here. The woman in question is 64 years old, and she's worked here at the Police Association for 20 years. The feds say almost half that time she spent buying and selling illegal drugs from outside the country, distributing them across the U.S. and the Bay Area, all while using the association's UPS account. Take a look. This is who we're talking about, 64-year-old Joanne Segovia. She's been the executive director for the San Jose Police Association since 2003 and is now the center of Homeland Security's international produced drug shipments case. According to court documents, she was dealing drugs and receiving shipments of them from places like Hong Kong, Hungary, and India, then shipping them across the U.S. Since when, you ask? Well, 2015, using both her home address and her work address. The feds say some of those packages were seized and opened, allegedly filled with thousands of pills, labeled with things like wedding party favors and gift makeup. The feds say she used a Cash App account for payments with not only her name that was linked, but also her work email. She now faces charges for importing and exporting opioids like fentanyl.
Now, many of these items are at the center of a federal gang investigation after they popped up during an FBI raid last Thursday. This distinctive Polaris slingshot, for instance, matches one of the vehicles the feds seized when they searched a home near Rio Bravo and Isleta. Inside that home, they also found $12,000 in cash, drugs, guns, and thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, including this necklace with a pendant in the shape of New Mexico. It matches the one the vocalist is wearing in the video, that can also be seen on top of the stacks of $100 bills, along with a gold-colored counting machine, which also turned up during the search.
Chiefsaholic has officially skipped his bail. Remember, he was allowed out on bail to go on a family trip to a Super Bowl that was potentially taking place. And before then, he was in jail because he was allegedly robbing banks with a gun on the way to Chiefs games so that he could get the best seat in the house and have his wolf face front row at all the big-time games. Now, Dog the Bounty Hunter is about to be called.
That's right.
Damn. Now Chiefsaholic is on the run. He did not make bail. He did not post bail. He is on the go. Everybody keep your eyes peeled for a wolf with a gun headed to a bank near you.
A food truck owner shot an armed man who tried to rob the business during the lunch hour in Southwest Houston. No one's in custody, and police are calling it a self-defense shooting.
Did she keep a gun on her just out of fear that something like this might happen?
Correct. 9 days you have to. Look, that's how it's bad.
Because she's a godly woman, that's why that gun jammed. Because God jammed it. Because when she opened that window, he could have shot her. But it jammed. People need to get a job and stop trying to rob people, because some people are trying to make an honest living.
1017, 2 victims confirmed, multiple gunshot wounds.
Allentown police were called around 1:30 a.m. following a deadly confrontation on this street. Police say it began when people were trying to open the car doors of parked vehicles. When a neighbor confronted the group, shots were fired. While it's not clear who shot who, the gunfire led to the resident and one of those individuals hit. Both men, ages 42 and 21, died. Neighbors say the man who lived on this street kept a watchful eye on the neighborhood. We counted 5 security cameras at his home. This case, part of a violent 24 hours in Allentown. Just hours before, a 39-year-old man identified as Darnell Thompson was shot multiple times. Police responded to that scene on the 500 block of North 4th Street around 6:30 p.m. Thursday evening.
They didn't realize how close to danger they were until it was too late.
I guess my younger one got to the ledge where the sandbar dropped off. My older one tried grabbing him and pulling him back, and he couldn't reach him, and then he got stuck in the riptide.
The boy's father, Dale Furness, and Corey raced to save them. Dale and passing boaters were able to get 2 of the boys to safety. But as a dam tried to keep 6-year-old Carson from drowning, he lost consciousness.
Dig into the text of this bill. It is outrageously broad. And I think it was Greg Price on Twitter who said this is the Patriot Act for the internet. A couple of things. This is Michael Sabolic. He says there's a reason the White House supports this legislation. They don't want to ban TikTok. The bill gives them a gigantic loophole to avoid doing so. The Warner-Thune Restrict Act is not a TikTok bill. If this thing passes, the chances of a TikTok ban or forced divestment grow incredibly small. Why? The bill slow walks actions against transactions that are under review. It's nuts. Tucker Carlson called attention to what you were saying about foreign adversaries, and he says, what's a foreign adversary and who gets to decide? The Secretary of Commerce and the Department and the DNI, not the Congress. They get to decide what foreign adversaries are. He goes on to point out that the transactions with foreign adversaries covered by the Restrict Act would include, quote, this is from the bill, any acquisition, importation, transfer, installation, dealing in, or use of any information and communications technology, product or service, including ongoing activities such as mandated services, data transmission, software updates, repairs, or the provision of data hosting services. And it gives the government basically the ability to tap into all kinds of your different communications, technological communications methods in order to make these determinations, evaluations as they're referred to in the bill. It's just incredibly broad.
BNSF failed to follow an agreement with the Swinomish Indian tribe relating to the train derailment that happened earlier this month. A 1991 agreement limits rail traffic and train sizes across the reservation. The court says that the train that derailed did not follow those rules, ruling BNSF trespassed on the tribe's land. In response, the tribe's chairman says they look forward for proceedings and compensation.
The trains are back up and running through River Park, the Union Pacific tracks right behind homes. The rail car sounds unmistakable. Their size, enormous. Union Pacific stopped these trains in their tracks early Tuesday.
I mean, it's scary.
After neighbor Curtis Cogdill made a remarkable discovery, he located this severed rail. The metal split and warped a gap where no gap is supposed to be.
It was clear that you have a broken track. I mean, these are supposed to be one piece, not multiple pieces here.
Cogdill's family lives right next to the tracks, and in recent days, he had noticed a change in the way the trains sounded as they barreled by right behind his home.
Last night, a 70-car train hauling hazardous materials derailed in North Dakota. According to local reports, the Canadian Pacific train derailed around 11:15 p.m. about a mile southeast of Windermere in Richland County. Officials said 31 of the 70 cars derailed, with some leaking petroleum that's used in the making of asphalt. The cleanup is expected to last between 7 and 10 days. No injuries were reported, and there's no danger to the public.
Union Pacific officials say 55 cars and 2 locomotives derailed while traveling southbound near Kel Baker Road and Kelso-Kaima Road in Kelso, towards the outskirts of San Bernardino County. According to Union Pacific, nobody was on that train operating it when that all happened. Now,
crew members were not in the cab at the time of that derailment.
Afterwards, a fire did ignite. San Bernardino County Fire tells me that was out by the time they got there. Train was hauling iron ore, which spilled out. The incident also causing a minor fuel leak, requiring the need for hazmat crews. No word on what caused the derailment. The crew was not in the cab when it happened, and they weren't injured. No passengers were on board.
It happened just before 1 this afternoon near 25th and Belmont. One car carried wheat and the other was empty. Freight train traffic was stopped for hours while crews worked at the scene. Overall, Metra, Canadian Pacific Railway, says no hazardous materials were involved in that derailment.
BNSF has confirmed that approximately 22 rail cars have in fact derailed. They have a mix of freight, including ethanol and corn syrup. Again, Highway 23, which is the main street through that town, has been closed off while crews battle that massive blaze. Really a frightening way to start the middle of the night as these folks were receiving notifications about the evacuation.
Big train derailment. This is over in Raymond, Minnesota.
Yeah, Raymond is about 2 hours west of us here in the Twin Cities. It's in Candy, Ojai County, not far from Wilmer. You'll also notice Princeburg on the map when we zoom in here. That is where authorities are telling people right now to evacuate.
Dozens of migrants from Central and South America died after a fire broke out Monday night at a migrant holding center in Mexico's northern border city of Ciudad Juarez. That's according to the Mexican government, which said there were 68 adult men staying at the facility. 29 of them were also injured in the blaze. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said the blaze apparently broke out after migrants set fire to mattresses in protest after discovering they would be deported. U.S. and Mexico are battling to cope with record levels of border crossings. Recent weeks have seen a buildup of migrants in Mexican border cities as authorities attempt to process asylum requests using a new U.S. government app.
2 U.S. Black Hawk helicopters crashed during a military training incident about 40 miles away from Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Officials say crew members from the 101st Airborne Division were flying 2 HH-60 Black Hawk choppers during a routine training mission when the crash happened around 10 last night.
Helicopters just disappeared out of the sky and there was a large flash. And we ran outside and we started seeing another helicopter that circled that area where I thought the impact was for probably 30 minutes. And then we saw ambulances and sirens.
The weapon failed to transmit in-flight performance data. Now, this data is crucial to understanding how the weapon flies. And if this data is missing, then the test is basically a failure. And it's another setback for America in the hypersonic missile race, especially for the ARRW project. Because this is not the first failure. Lockheed's missiles have failed before, at least thrice. They suffered booster test failures, and production keeps getting delayed because of this. The US had initially planned to deploy the ARRW this year, but it seems unlikely. Of course, this is not the only US hypersonic missile program. They have others for the US Navy and the Army too, and the Air Force too has another program, a hypersonic missile being produced by Raytheon.
Western nations which supply Ukraine are not in a total war footing. Ukraine is blowing through ammo so fast they could expend the entirety of US aid by summer if they don't husband their resources. The only way they could really keep up with their weapons demand was if our economies went into overdrive to supply them, something not even the idiot, most bloodthirsty neocons would ever advocate for, because obviously it would make America's population ask a lot of questions. A new report from a series of inside whistleblowers over US defense readiness shows us not only has aid to Ukraine made us far less safe in our ability to prepare for conflict, but that unsurprisingly, the money that we do spend, even on ourselves, is a gigantic boondoggle. South Korea, though, of all places, stepped up. Why? Because unlike America, South Korea is not a silly country. They have been in an effective state of war since their founding, and of course have strict laws on the books, keeping a robust internal supply chain in the event of potential conflict with North Korea. When the war in Ukraine broke out and the West was buying weapons, they were happy to oblige because they have the ability to spin up quickly. They had the technical know-how, they basically are an allied nation already, and they had the people to actually do it. More so, they don't have to choose between themselves and others because they had so much excess at their capacity and at their fingertips. The crazy part, South Korea spends only a relative $50 billion a year on defense, or 2.7% of GDP. The America, meanwhile, spends $842 billion, or 3.3% of GDP. So we spend orders of magnitude more in both absolute and percentage-based terms, but we are weaker, less nimble, less safe. How does that work? Because of the corruption of the military-industrial complex. That's something I've always maintained here, that the size of the defense budget and the debate around it, it misses the picture. Yes, it's too big, but why? We are at a major turning point here as a country. Last times things were this dire, it was 1940. We had no financialization, we had a massive untapped industrial capacity. I have no doubt that eventually we might be okay should things go south, but thousands and potentially millions should not have to die before we do so. The lessons that we have forgotten were forged in blood, and unfortunately, it looks as if we may have to spill that blood again before we ever wake up from whatever this hell is going on here.
Russia has assumed the United Nations Security Council presidency despite Ukraine's complaints. The United States say that it could not block Russia, which is a permanent council member, from assuming the presidency.
Volodymyr Zelensky told the Associated Press that if they were to lose Bakhmut, he'll be forced to compromise with Putin. He said, quote, "Our society will feel tired. Our society will push me to have to compromise with them." He said Putin will be able to sell this victory to the West, to his society, to China, to Iran, and it will be used as leverage to seek a ceasefire deal that would involve redrawing the map.
Bakhmut, right now we have 80,000 Ukrainian soldiers committed to this fight. 80,000. And what Volodymyr Zelensky is saying is, when they lose this battle, and Kim, they're going to lose this battle. They're losing it as we speak. They will lose 80,000 men. And when that happens, the Ukrainian army is gutted.
Well, the United States and South Korea have conducted their first large-scale amphibious landing exercises in 5 years. The drills are taking place off the coast of eastern Pohang. North Korea accused the US and South Korea of rehearsing an invasion. On Tuesday, Pyongyang unveiled what it said were new and smaller nuclear warheads, declaring it will produce more weapons-grade nuclear material.
Because these exercises are really about sending a message of deterrence to North Korea. In other words, the United States and South Korea work together, they stand together, and they will defeat any North Korean attack upon South Korea.
Recent operations in the U.S. Central Command area of responsibility. Per our DoD statement last night, a U.S. contractor was killed yesterday and 5 U.S. service members and 1 additional U.S. contractor were wounded after a one-way unmanned aerial vehicle struck a maintenance facility on a coalition base near Hasaka in northeast Syria at approximately 1:38 p.m. local time.
United States and Iran have come to blows again. American airstrikes hit targets in eastern Syria overnight. The strikes focused on Deir el-Zur and near the towns of Mayadin and Bukamal, aiming at groups linked with Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The Pentagon says it was retaliation after an Iranian-made drone killed a U.S. contractor and wounded 6 other Americans. President Biden said the U.S. military will do what's needed to safeguard its 900 troops in northeastern Syria. French President Emmanuel Macron insisted today he won't be deterred from raising the retirement age to 64 despite the worst street violence in years. Trouble erupted overnight after a day of largely peaceful protests. Today, crews in Paris sifted through damage in the wake of street battles between anarchists and police. But Macron vowed to press on.
What is BRICS and how can it topple U.S. dollar dominance? BRICS is an acronym. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's kind of like the G7. It's an alliance for peace, security, development, and cooperation.
It goes beyond these things. Just today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Other BRICS country, India, has indicated that it's putting into place a mechanism for international trade settlements and rupees. The Indian currency will allow New Delhi to bypass using the US dollar in case of sanctions. India is also a major buyer of Russian arms, and Indian refineries have started paying for most of their Russian oil in other currencies rather than the US dollar.
The government hopes it will at least ease the situation.
Our plan is just to cater to the bakery industry and the hoteliers. So when we fulfill their requirement, automatically the other eggs, the local produced egg, will come to the market. So then the consumers would be able to get the egg at a competitive price, reasonable price.
The poultry industry has supplied local demand in recent years, with eggs last imported in 2012. But there have been shortages in recent months and a tripling of egg prices in just a year. Farmers say a surge in the price of chicken feed is to blame, the result of fertilizer restrictions and a lack of foreign currency. Farmers say
importing corn was a problem because of the dollar issue, and there was no locally grown corn because of the ban on agrochemicals. Many farms had to close. If they had got raw materials as they needed, this wouldn't have happened.
A new study now shows that many of China's loans have fared badly, putting not just borrowers in danger, but also Chinese banks.
Another country is opening its doors to China. This time it's Honduras, which could join China's multi-billion-dollar infrastructure program, the Belt and Road Initiative. But there's more to the mega project than a quick path to investment. Many Belt and Road participants have been struggling to pay back billions in loans, forcing Beijing to bail out debtors to save its own banking system, which lent them the cash in the first place. China spent $240 billion to bail out Belt and Road countries between 2008 and 2021. Almost 80% of the rescue loans were issued between 2016 and 2021. Argentina received the most, with $111.8 billion, followed by Pakistan and Egypt.
111.8 billion.
9 countries received less than $1 billion.
Evan Gershkovich is driven away from a Moscow court after appearing on charges of espionage. The 31-year-old Wall Street Journal reporter was arrested by Russia's Federal Security Service in the eastern city of Yekaterinburg, accused of collecting information related to military activity. Gershkovich's lawyer was denied access to his hearing. He denied his client had done anything wrong.
The UK government says energy companies have forcibly installed 94,000 prepayment meters in 2022. This comes after reports were published accusing energy firms of forcibly installing prepayment meters at vulnerable households. The energy crisis triggered by the Russia-Ukraine war has forced around 2 million UK households into fuel and energy poverty in 2022. According to the UK government, 3 energy firms are responsible for at least 70% of all forced installations. These suppliers are Scottish Power, British Gas and OVO, out of which the UK government attributed Scottish Power to be the worst offender, with more than 24,000 installations.
Officials in the Dutch capital Amsterdam have launched a digital campaign to try to reduce the number of British tourists coming in search of drugs, sex and alcohol. Discouraging adverts like this one will target 18 to 35-year-old men in the UK. The messages are automatically triggered when search teams such as stag party, search terms such as stag party, cheap hotel or pub crawl in Amsterdam are typed in.
It's my whole life.
Sheldon Thomas was 16 when police took down the door of his home and locked him up. Now, 19 years later, he's been effectively exonerated.
What's been hard about just being out and about? It's been so little time.
Just like what you said, being out and about, adjusting, being around people.
Thomas was convicted for second-degree murder in the December 2004 death of a 14-year-old boy in Brooklyn.
I haven't even cried yet since I've been home. Like, I haven't even got to the point where it actually hit me. I don't like losing, so I have to let go because I don't want that to be what defines me as a human, as a person. I want love to define me.
Down on Tokate, the orca living in captivity at the Miami Seaquarium for 53 years, big news about her future was being announced at a ballroom in downtown Miami.
I think we can do it.
Official confirmation that a formal and binding agreement has now been signed between the non-for-profit Friends of Toki and the owner of the Miami Seaquarium, the Dolphin Company, to begin the process of returning the 56-year-old orca back home to her natal waters in the Pacific Northwest.